What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Thanks so much for your support. Florida Panthers did win their second game, but today, at least at the moment of recording this video, we have a game 3 coming, which is going to be scary, not gonna lie, but, well, once again, guys, we assemble together, so let's all cheer together. Let's go, Florida Panthers. But okay, now let's get back to the video. Imagine spending billions to lure desperate men into war, only to suddenly slash their rewards halfway through the invasion. Well, that is exactly what is happening in Russia right now. After over 40 months of a full-scale war against Ukraine, Moscow is quietly pulling back on the financial bait it once used to fill body bags. The flashy bonuses, once pitched as golden tickets to a better life, are drying up. Not because the war is won, but because the state can no longer afford the illusion. The Russian government is cutting signing bonuses in several regions, not by mistake, not because they suddenly grew a consciousness, but because they are running out of money, bombers, patience, and most of all, men. This is not just an economic tweak, it is a red flag that the war machine is grinding its own gears into dust. So today, let's talk about how these cuts signal something far deeper than budget trouble. It is a warning shot about how much longer this disaster can be sustained, and whether it can be sustained at all. In the early stages of Putin's so-called special military operation, the Russian government knew exactly how to get men to sign up for a war they did not understand and did not want. The answer was simply cash. Lots of it. You've got bills, loans, no job, perfect. Sign a contract, grab a rifle and say goodbye to your future. And they did, especially in the poorest regions like Bashkortostan, where a signing bonus of over 1.6 million rubles was more than most families see in the entire year. So obviously it was not a patriotism, it was survival. These insane numbers reshaped local economies, especially where the only other alternative was unemployment or alcoholism. But now, in the middle of 2025, those very same numbers are shrinking. Bashkortostan slashed its bonus to only 1 million rubles. That's a cut of over 35%. Other regions are doing exactly the same. And it's not because recruitment is doing great. It is because the budget is burning down. Even before the cuts, Russia was spending around $24 million every single day just to keep recruitment alone alive. That is not counting the cost of equipment, logistics or body bags. The payments were originally inflated to meet quotas without triggering another mobilization. But here's the thing, even with the bonuses, the number of daily recruits has dropped from around 1,400 to just 900. That is a 35% drop in just weeks. And I know very interesting similarity between these numbers, which honestly is just coincidental. The people who wanted to sell their lives already did, and the rest, they have seen enough drone videos and funerals to just know better. Speaking about those drone videos, they are not just social media shocker anymore, they're testimonials, they're lessons from beyond the grave. Every time a Ukrainian drone obliterates a Russian unit on camera, it chips away at the illusion that this war can be won or survived. Totally different from wars in the past, where the only legitimate source of losses and enemy eliminations was the official statistics presented by nobody else but the government itself. Whatever the government said the number was the truth. There was no way to prove or deny it, unless you actually fought the war, and even then, your knowledge was only collected from a very small area of contact. The rest of the frontline statistics, you also had to, guess what, just trust the government. As you can see, the last thing you probably should do. Once upon a time, a Russian man might have believed the war was distant, that he had been guarding checkpoints or patrolling quiet towns. But when you see drones flying through the windows, dropping grenades and turning trenches into graves in seconds, it hits very different. It becomes real, and no bonus can cover the price of being turned into paste by a machine you even never saw coming. Now let's talk about what's fueling this financial squeeze, and spoiler alert, it is not just inflation. One of the most devastating blows to the Russian budget came in the form of Ukrainian drones. Specifically, one of the most recent operations, Spiderweb, also known as Pavutyna, which was a surgical nightmare for the Kremlin. Ukrainian forces managed to destroy a huge chunk of Russian long-range bomber fleet. We're talking dozens of warplanes, some of which are irreplaceable Soviet-era beasts like the Tu-95MS BRH and the Tu-22M3 Backfire. Satellite images from Siberia and the Arctic show burned-out carcasses of planes Russia once showed off to the world as completely untouchable and unreachable, especially to countries like Ukraine. The Kremlin denied the losses, of course, most of them. That's what they always do. But even Russian military bloggers could not keep their mouths shut. They confirmed that the damage was catastrophic, and they pointed fingers at negligent commanders. So now, not only is Russia hemorrhaging manpower, it is also trying to replace planes that have not been manufactured in decades. And I mean, good luck with that, right? Most of the aircrafts were upgraded Cold War relics, and Western sanctions have cut off critical microchips and avionics components. Because now you cannot rebuild a bomber with simple nostalgia and desire. We want to rebuild a plane, but how to do it? Who knows? This damage is not just symbolic, it is logistical hell. Those bombers were being used daily. They were not museum pieces. They carried out missile strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, manufacturing facilities, and unfortunately mostly civilian targets. They were part of Russia's last-ditch attempt to maintain long-range firepower, and losing them does not just mean fewer attacks. It means slower ones. It means longer intervals. It means reduced intimidation. Sorry for little voice crack there. Meanwhile, rebuilding these fleets is like trying to put together a spaceship with parts from, home blender. The two 160M Blackjack bombers. Putin loves to ride them in them for photo ops, but only 4 are made per year. At that pace, replacing what was lost in just one drone strike campaign will take over a decade. And that is if nothing else is destroyed in the meantime. But as you would have guessed, things will continue getting destroyed. On top of this, Russia's economic engine is misfiring. Inflation is creeping higher, interest rates are choking loans, and average citizens are feeling it. Salaries are not rising, groceries are more expensive, and yet the military still gets the priority. The thing that started the inflation, accelerated it, and then skyrocketed is still receiving enormous amounts of unjustified money to continue doing exactly the same. I can only imagine the frustration of the Central Bank of Russia seeing all these things and not being able to do absolutely anything, because they do not have a say in Putin's new favorite game of war. The war consumes everything, and still, it's still not enough. The only reason all this was able and still is possible is thanks to the enormous efforts of the Russian propaganda. And these effects are now fading as well. Let's talk about this right now. For a while, the Kremlin could get away with selling the war as a righteous crusade. Nazis in Kiev, NATO on the doorstep, Slavic Brotherhood and peril, you name it. And for a while it worked, especially in isolated regions where propaganda fills every screen and dissent gets you jailed. But over time, that fantasy began to crack. First came the whispers of soldiers being duped, mostly of promised bonuses that were never paid. Then the horror stories from the front lines, soldiers freezing in trenches, starving, dying without support, being sent into hopeless meat assaults, and then just being tossed into mass graves with little to no recognition, and then ultimately missing paperwork, so even relatives were not able to claim death benefits. Those tales, let me tell you what, travel fast. No amount of TV magic can erase them. Propaganda thought it could hide the truth, but the truth always finds its way out. The posters that once shouted slogans now just show ruble amounts in huge fonts. It's not even about fighting anymore, it's about escaping poverty, even if it means dying somewhere in Donetsk. But now, even the illusion is collapsing. When regional authorities start cutting the cash, they are not just trimming the budget, they are admitting that the scheme is not working anymore. You cannot bait people with a dream they no longer believe in. So what's the Kremlin's solution then? More lies, more staged parades, more glorified funerals. They will show photos of men in crisp uniforms, standing tall next to their mothers, medals on their chest, but what they will not show is the burned-out armored personnel carriers where their comrades died in or the amputations they came back with. What they will not show is the bank declining their widow's payment because the paperwork was not perfect. And definitely not the images of officers blackmailing new recruits for their 7-figure bonuses. And the worst part for Russians, even those who survive come home to nothing. No support system, no jobs, just PTSD and complete silence. Veterans are being discarded the same way used ammo is, and the public is noticing. Propaganda has a shelf life, and in Russia it is starting to rot. This is not just about money or aircrafts. This is about a regime that has reached the point where every lever it pulls brings diminishing returns. The budget cannot handle the strain, the factories cannot build fast enough, and the population, which is scarred, scared, and shrinking, no longer sees war as a ticket to prosperity. Finally, at least some people started to realize that life is priceless and there are better ways to escape this poverty. Military experts say Russia has lost over 10% of its strategic bomber fleet. Some say it is the whole third of it. That is not just military statistics, it is a national humiliation, a reminder that the empire is bleeding from more than just its borders. Russia's high-tech replacement projects like the Tupac-DA bomber are years behind schedule. Maybe a prototype will fly in 2026, maybe production will begin in 2027, but that's not soon enough to make up for the wreckage left by Ukrainian drones. And meanwhile, Putin keeps claiming 60,000 new recruits every month, and all of them are volunteers. But we all know numbers are his favorite fiction. The real stats say otherwise, and the drop in bonuses tells the truth. Fewer men are showing up, and the ones who do are starting to demand more than a death sentence with a payday attached. And here is something no one in Moscow wants to admit. The longer this war drags on, the worse the options become. You cannot mobilize again without backlash. You cannot keep raising bonuses without crushing the budget. And you cannot stop the bleeding. That's the trifecta Putin faces, and so far he is failing all three. If things continue this way, Russia might not even need a Ukrainian counteroffensive to collapse. It will just run out of parts, out of soldiers, out of lies. All it takes is just one pillar of clumsy state machine to collapse. And the rest will follow. Well, there ahead, guys, if you missed my previous episode of Thank God It's Monday podcast, it is already uploaded. I speak once again with the sanctioned Ivan. The story he tells is just listen to yourself. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Thanks so much for watching. Let's go Panthers, and see you tomorrow. We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe